Hello, everyone. Welcome to Epic Work Items Migration Workgroup Sync meeting. It's October 26th. And since last meeting, we have one update from previous meeting. That is, we have the issue around setting up how to inherit dates, especially with the date widget and how parent-child work item relationship is going to work. So the issue has been scheduled for 16/6. And Casio and Himanshu are assigned to it. So yeah, and as per issue specific discussions, so we have first item from Donald.
Hey, sorry, just looking at the spike because that might also be related. And I know so is your point B around Epic start due dates. So yeah, same thing. Okay, so there's been a few conversations around roll-ups. Should list off the questions that we need answered. But as far as like where roll-up data should live, where the logic that contains the roll-up data should live, and yeah, just how we want to handle essentially all widget roll-up data. So let's start with where the question that's asked in the link that I or in the issue that I linked there, which is for the hierarchy widget. Should the roll-up data live in the hierarchy widget, or should it live and I'm sorry, yeah, if it lives in the hierarchy widget, should it, well, yeah, here, let's start off with that. Does anyone have any questions or comments on for the hierarchy widget where the roll-up data should live?
Maybe I can add some more information on that one. I mean, I remember discussing with you. So my question and what I think your question was too is, I mean, we have a couple alternatives. We have the rollups we want, right? We want the counts of the child issues we have of the children we have. We want the counts of the weights, and we want the counts of the health status, right? So those are the three things we need for the designs we have. So one alternative would be that we have all of these counts on the hierarchy widget, which, because they are all related to having children, right? But the problem there would be that if we add weight counts to the hierarchy widget, they would kind of become related, you know, the weight widget and the hierarchy widget. So that's the question, where do we put these counts? And as I said to Donald, there could be an alternative. I mean, we could maybe have a separate widget, you know, like maybe the children count does belong in the hierarchy widget. I think that makes sense. But for the weight widget rollups, we might have another widget. And then for widgets like this, we could validate, right? We could validate that the work item type already has the weight widget included and that it has the hierarchy widget before you can add this one, right? That kind of depends on both. That's an alternative, but that's, well, that's precisely the question we had and what we wanted to discuss here. If you have thoughts on it, what do you think?
So if I got it right, the problem is that we want to cache counts from multiple other widgets like both hierarchy, weight, or health issue. These are all separate widgets, right? So would it make sense to have some cache table which has some reference to the hierarchy widget, to the parent in hierarchy widget, and this cache table is used from all these multiple widgets, whichever needs it, because any widget can use basically whatever tables it needs, right? It's not necessary that each widget should have one separate table.
Right. No. Yeah, that was kind of a follow-up question for me too. No, this is more about the interface we're going to present. I mean, the question just where do we locate these new fields on the GraphQL API? And if we need to, I mean, where do we put the weight rollup count, and where do we put the health status counts as they come? So should it be a separate widget specific to these counts, or would it be okay to do something like put these counts on the hierarchy widget, which kind of would make it dependent on other widgets, right? Because right now weight is independent from the hierarchy widget, and we could have only one of them. And then what we could do is on the hierarchy widget, have a description saying that these fields are going to return null if you don't have the weight widget on the type 2, something like that. So that's an alternative. Personally, I like a little bit better having a separate widget, and then maybe introduce these dependency validations on the work item types. This will work when we have custom work item types, so people can add something like the weight rollup widget without adding the weight and the hierarchy widget first. This is something we can easily do on active record validations. So yeah, those are my thoughts. And I definitely want to go back to caching the values. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and then just
sorry.
oh, go ahead, John.
I was just going to say I like this also because I like the idea of separating into a separate widget, because like you get a separation of concerns. There are different concepts, like weight versus roll-up weight are two different concepts, and they're not always mutually exclusive. Like, for example, there was once a discussion about having roll-up weight and set weight on epics, because some customers wanted to like set a weight on an epic as like a target and then have the roll-up compared to the target. And so they're two different concepts, and you don't really want to confuse roll-up weight and kind of defined weight or whatever you call it. And then I also like it because like in the first instance, it's probably fine. So if it's part of iteration that it's on the hierarchy widget in the beginning, like I'm fine with that. But eventually, like we'll end up with an n+1 kind of interface problem, like where we add more things that can roll up. So we have to show all those things on the same widget plus the count. And yeah, it doesn't scale. So yeah, like I would be in favor of separate widgets, but I'm fine with like starting with having them on the hierarchy widget. That's really like an engineering decision, in my opinion.
That makes sense, and I don't think it's additional work to have it on a separate widget than to have it on this existing one. So if that's preferable, we can just do it like that from the start.
Okay, yeah, I agree. But can we also, Amanda, can you vocalize your point too? Because that's the next part of this is, yeah, you want to go with number 2, and then we'll
Yeah,
I think
sure.
we'll continue.
Sure. I just want to say that, John, you're on the right track. In the future, I see us having like a planned weight versus an actual weight. Not something we'll do now, but to keep that in mind. The current problem that we have is for the roll-up at the epic level, we do not currently want to consider task weight. We want to only roll up the weight of the children that we're going to show, and that's sub-epics and issues. We're not going to show tasks at this time. In the future, we may choose to show tasks, and we may choose to incorporate that in the roll-up value. But I understand that that presents a challenge because you want to show the task roll-up weight on the issue hierarchy widget. So I'd like to kind of just make sure that we're on the same page with that.
So yeah, so knowing that that is a requirement, where do we want? Because ideally the widgets do not have a dependency or do not really care about the work item type that they're included in, or they don't have any knowledge of the work item type. How can we do that and still accomplish not showing the weights for certain types of work item types?
Well, we do have a table for the specific to the hierarchy widget configuration. We currently do checks like depth and who can be a parent of who. So maybe this is something we can configure in that table too. I mean, right now we do have a configuration for an issue being able to be the parent of a task. So maybe we can do something around there saying like, don't roll up counts for this relationship, or just for this one, or maybe give a list of the types we want to, the IDs of the types we want to roll up. I don't know, just an idea, but yeah, I mean, we should avoid doing something like putting this on the code, like do not roll up tasks for if the root parent is epic, something like that. There might be a way. I'm not sure if someone already looked into this, but I haven't. And Jan, you originally worked on this table for the hierarchy widget configurations. Not sure if you think that's something that might work.
Yeah, sorry, I was just focusing on typing additional comment. So I missed the suggestion.
No worries. No, I was just saying that if we want to have control on what types of work items we want to include on the rollup, if this is something we could configure on the hierarchy. I don't remember the name. Hierarchy
I see.
table.
Yeah, that might be one of options. If there is no other way, potential concern is that we would end up with overloading with table with all the various conditions what should be included where. So I was wondering if there would be other alternative to just assign this roll-up weight widget to the selective types of work items which we want to get involved in this rolled up weight logic. So we would assign roll-up weight widget only to epic and issue types, but not to tasks, which would cause that the roll-up weight would be counted only only for types which have this roll-up weight widget assigned, but other types would be ignored in this caching logic. But it would work only. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. So then how would that work with within issues then? When issues are work items, would we have to explicitly say for the issue work item type, use the task weight? You know?
Yeah, I see. So for issues, we would want to include the rollup weight of task, but not for ethics. Yeah, that was my. I was wondering if that would be the case. Yeah, in that case, it wouldn't work probably.
I have a simplistic question. There's got to be logic that exists to not display tasks on the hierarchy widget. Is there, since that's going to occur, is there a way to just say roll up the weight of the items that are displayed?
So there isn't yet, and that's a question also, in that for the hierarchy widget, do we want to allow not showing certain work item types within that widget? Because we have the same problem
Yeah.
there in that we don't want to show tasks in the Epic hierarchy widget, but we do want to show tasks within the issue hierarchy widget.
Is this solved by the idea of kind of cloning the widget that we were discussing in the thread, Donald? By having a specific flavor of the widget for epics versus a flavor of the widget for issues?
Possibly.
I don't think so, because like I think what we have to do is maybe like put some of these possible hierarchies together and really see how this would work, because like think about it at the epic level. An epic weight would be a roll-up of all sub-epics and direct issues that are direct child issues. From the issues, you're getting their assigned weight. From the sub-epics, you're getting their roll-up weight. And you're summing all of those to get the weight of the epic you're looking at, right? So you've no way to know. And if you give complete freedom to people to create their own hierarchies with their own objects and everything, you have no way to really know whether something should be included or not, or whether you should be summing the roll-up weight or the set weight. Especially like the funny thing with epics is they're kind of a perfect example, because you would say, okay, well, anything that can't be in a hierarchy, we'll just use the assigned weight. But that's not true either, because issues can also have children called tasks, and we don't want to use their assigned weight. It's really tricky. I think we'll probably need to take this offline and make some examples and figure it out. I feel like I haven't explained this very well at all.
No, you have. It's just, yeah, it is a big it's a tricky one. And I was hoping the other way, because we have been talking about this async for a bit. But now maybe since we've talked about it sync, we're kind of all on the same page as far as what the problems we're trying to solve are. And then we can go back and discuss a little bit better async now. But you're right, we should probably move on to some of the other points.
Okay,
If
so
we have time, we can start. Go ahead.
yeah, so related to rollup, but not about numbers, but rather dates. So in the Epic start and due date widgets, we have been discussing on like having terminology of inherit versus rollup. Like in OKRs, it makes sense to have key results inherit the date from its parent objective. I mean, at least that's what I've been doing with the key results that we plan on quarterly basis, where parent objective would have a milestone associated for a given quarter, and then its child key result that I create, I would set its start and due date that matches with the milestone that parent objective has. So technically, I'm inheriting dates for that key result from its parent objective. And that's what inherit the word itself means. But when we look at epics, I don't know what was the motivation behind using the term inherit, but it is the way it is, where dates are inherited the other way around, where child issues and the milestone associated with the child issues govern the date of parent epics. But that doesn't mean that it is not confusing users. Like in one of the customer calls that I had earlier this year, the customer had the confusion where they had a child epic with no dates set and inherit selected, and they were expecting that parent epic would have the influence on start and due dates. It was only after I pointed them to our documentation stating that they would need to first associate an issue with a milestone as a child to this epic to be able to inherit the dates. So I don't know whether we have the opportunity at this point to, given that we are working on this redesigned version of epics, where we can at least rename that to prevent the confusion. I don't know from the product perspective whether it makes sense, because we would have to educate our users that the behavior remains intact, just that instead of calling it inherit, we are calling it as roll up. And then perhaps introduce inherit where it actually makes sense in scenarios where a parent objective can influence child key result, and maybe other relationship types where tasks can have due date based on parent issue. So this is something that I've been thinking. So Amanda, you want to chime in?
Yeah. Yeah, so you're totally right, 100% right. Inherited is the wrong word. People are confused about it, needs to be fixed and updated. We are not doing it now. We are planning a much bigger change to the whole kind of date inheritance and how it interacts with children. Very similar to what John explained with weight. We're going to introduce a planned date and have a separate actual date so that we can do the difference between what was planned, did we come in early, come in late. And in that time, we're going to fix/change the inheritance to be a true ability to go top down or bottom up with those dates. And we'll change terminology at that time, because we're going to do this mass overhaul. We don't want to do a change now and then a change then. So agree that it's a problem, but we're not addressing it today. We're just achieving parity today. OKRs will not inherit, objectives will not receive dates. I confirmed that with Abhilash. It has milestone on the objective, key result has dates, so we will not implement inheritance on OKRs. So the outstanding question that we need to answer to be able to move forward with the dates is, how do we handle the fact that an Epic record needs the toggle button that says inherited or fixed, and no other work item type needs it? They may need dates, but they don't need the toggle. So similar to the other thing, how do we handle this one use case slightly differently?
So this again leads to like tying a widget behavior based on work item types. And I don't know, like from the engineering perspective, whether we want to continue introducing widget behaviors based on the underlying work item type. I know some widgets already do, particularly progress, which is again related to OKRs. But I don't know from engineering perspective whether it makes sense to have work item specific logic tied to individual widgets.
Maybe that would require a new widget, because that's what we do. We put it in different types. So this could be a new type of start due date widget, and we only put it in the Epic type.
Yeah, so I think that is something that we can discuss async, whether we want to create a new widget that is again date range, but with support for rolling up or inherit dates from child issues. And
Kushal,
yep.
I think this was brought up async already. It would be great if we could just action to create a decision here, unless you feel really strongly about discussing it more.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any reservations on introducing new widgets just for Epics. Like we have had widgets created to work with specific types, and I think Epic is strong enough of a contender to create its own date range widget. So I don't mind if we want to act on it directly. I'll go ahead and add that item in the action item section. So if we already have a spike, then maybe something that we can work on because this is something that is actually blocking our progress towards synchronizing tables. So we want to make sure that this widget is around so that we can actually execute on it quickly and have it ready for data copy. Yeah.
I think it's not a specific widget for Epics though, right, Eugenie? Like, correct me if I'm wrong. It's a role, like let's call it it's an inherited date widget, which would be separate and included on some types and not on others. So it would be reusable.
Yeah, I said Epics because we only have the use for it in Epics, but I imagine there could be another type where the dates are inherited or roll up.
And should we add a condition so we can only have one of those two added to a type? I mean, we already have the start and due date widget, so I guess they wouldn't be able to live together in a single type, right? I mean, they might use the same columns or I don't know. One seems like a more specialized type of the other. I mean, so yeah, maybe if we do introduce a new one, we can validate that only one of those two exists, something like that.
Yeah, but also the epics have the option to have the fixed date, so that's kind of like the normal widget. And then I don't know, yeah, that's something that we can see in the spike if it's worth having the specialized one, including the simple one, or if we would need both of them. When you're creating the epic and you just put fixed date, that would be the simple widget. But if you put inherited, you would use the new widget. That's the way I was seeing it, but
they
just
might not.
But
I guess we'll see when we get to implementation, if it actually we need to validate they don't exist together. They might not. Yeah.
Yeah, because there also needs to be logic on where on the children that it's getting the roll-up date from, right? So on the whatever we're calling it, inherited or roll-up widget, if its child is also using the inherited roll-up widget, we take the date from that widget as opposed to the non-roll-up date, right?
Yeah, I think this is where we start to see dependencies between widgets, and I don't know if we're going to avoid this, because for example, for this roll-up or whatever we call it for dates, they check the children and the milestones, so that's two widgets that we need to check if where we get the date from. And so the child, the issue, whatever is underneath, it needs to have those widgets as well. So yeah, I don't know if there's a simple way to just combine this into one widget and give all of it. I think we're gonna start checking the things more often now.
Okay, so then to answer Amanda's question, is the decision here to create a new widget, that a new inherited rollup widget, as opposed to trying to reuse our current date widget that we have for that we currently have in I think it's in TAS and KRs. Okay.
There's no objection, right? Nobody objects to having a separate widget.
Yeah, I'll be sure to ping Casio and Himanshu in the spike that I create, because they'll be working on the backend and front end of this new widget. So
yeah, he created an MR already, and we were discussing this async. So I can discuss it with him as well. So we make sure to include it in the spike, because we might find something wrong about it, but it feels like maybe it's a way to start checking the type of the work item, and just that check should be done by including or not the widget in the type.
So should that be the pattern then? Like, we're specifically talking about the date widget. Should that be the pattern for other things that are going to roll up that we were discussing earlier? So for weights, should we have a simple weight widget and a inherited roll-up widget? Or should we hold off on that decision?
yeah, I think it might be overkill, because dates are hard, right? So I mean, with epics, dates have always been like the forefront of multiple features around epics and their behaviors, particularly roadmap. So I think it makes a strong case to have dedicated widget for epic that includes date ranges. But yeah, I mean, if we come across any other widget that has similar complexity that requires specialized version of that same simpler widget, then we can definitely consider.
Well, I think we already are with things like weight, as far as especially with like metrics, for like burn down charts. We want to figure out whether we should include task weight in those charts. So like the logic already is getting somewhat complex with other things other than dates. So yeah, maybe we can just hold off since we don't really need to work on those, I don't think, in 16.6. And dates are the more urgent asks. We can kind of use dates as an experiment on whether we want to create separate widgets or not for the other roll-up widgets.
Okay.
All right, are we on Mario's?
I'm
Yeah,
next.
yep.
Okay, so yeah, just to continue what we discussed at the beginning with Jan, yeah, we started an, I think, discussion on whether we should use something like columns on the database to cache discounts, or if we can use something like traversal IDs, as we do with namespaces, to get discounts. Yeah, I saw the issue you linked, Jan, and it was yeah, I mean, we would definitely have to. I was planning on doing a POC just to see if there's a way we can use traversal like this for the hierarchy in work items. That's why my question was if we are ever going to be able to have multiple parents. I see we are not, right? This is a final decision already, Amanda.
That's
So
correct.
in that case, we could, in theory, use traversal IDs, but still, I mean, we still have to analyze if the performance will allow to do this. It can get pretty complex. Yeah, and I was thinking something like we might be able to get a set of data from the database and then do many calculations in memory, perhaps. And one of my concerns was that the GraphQL API allows to go many levels deep. So in theory, we could make these queries extremely complex, but that might be solvable by adding the complexity, I mean, increasing the complexity of this field. So people making those requests hit a limit at some point, so they cannot go too many levels too deep. I was thinking we might also be able to restrict fetching these kind of fields only at the root levels of the query, maybe, but perhaps it's more generic to do it with the complexity thing, and it might just work. But anyway, unless you already think that there's a reason this might not work, I mean, I was going to work on a POC to see if there might be a way to get this information in a performant way by introducing something like traversal IDs.
Yeah, I think that traversal IDs would be a good alternative or approach, especially if we would show these rolled up counts only in the hierarchy widget for single item. But I suspect that it will not scale out well if we want to show these counts in other places for multiple items together. For epics, use case for which we had to add these cache counts was that there was a requirement to show overall weight counts, for example, in board lists. Yeah, so for each list in the board, user could see the overall weight of all epics and issues under these epics for each list. So we had to dynamically select all epics in the list, and it will be quite hard to also dynamically count weights for all the descendants. So I suspect that traversal IDs wouldn't work in these use cases, but if we are fine with not ever showing these roll-up counts in such situations, then I agree that traversal IDs is a nice thing to have, which will optimize the hierarchy widget also in other use cases than only showing these roll-up counts.
Right. And well, another concern of mine would be that one of these queries is maybe complex and might be a little bit slow, but then having to do it, for example, 3 times on the designs we have to show counts by health status, the weight one, and also the children count. Even then, even if they run in parallel, it might be too much. But yeah, I'll do a quick try to see how they perform. But yeah, in the end, you're right. We will definitely have better performance if we cache these values. I mean, regardless of how efficient it can be with traversal IDs.
Yeah, for the similar situation was for epics, and if I remember correctly, Charlie used. In the end, we ended up with loading the whole descendant tree for epic and doing some aggregation counts in memory, both for counts and for weights. So yeah, we did it as you was thinking about, to do it in memory for multiple cached values together. But there was still, it was still quite expensive to do this, as the hierarchy tree can be quite huge if in worst case scenarios.
Right. Right, and even, I mean, for the current design, that's what I was asking the other day. I mean, how many levels we're going to be able to display on a single request. But yeah, it might extend to more levels at some point and or some requirements. So yeah, if you already did it, I mean, in memory and all, yeah, it might not be worth exploring. I mean, we already know it's not going to be as performant as caching the values. So. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think last item is in the demos. So Felipe, I mean, do you want to verbalize the MR that you've created? Just a quick FYI, because we are close to time. So.
Oh yeah, no problem. Yeah, this is probably a bit ahead of the time, but it looks like we're not in the implementation phase. But I just created an MR, did not use a spike, a formal spike. I was just trying to see any hard blocks to do if I could spot any challenges when doing this, what I consider maybe a foundational work to sync creation update of epics as work items, and from there we go bringing and migrating other widgets and other tables like nodes and etc. So yeah, any feedbacks appreciated. I left some comments in the MR, and I think Jan has some questions if he wants to verbalize.
Thank you for starting on this. It's pretty awesome. I was just curious if we do this synchronization on service layer. I wonder if there are some situations which we need to address, like would there be some situations when epic is not created through create service, but through some other way, which we would need to handle explicitly, or are we sure that everything goes through create service?
I'm not sure. I know that we cannot create epics, like import them as CSV, but maybe we can. I think we can import groups, and maybe epics are coming with the import. I'm not sure if they're using this service, but yeah, that's a good point. I have to check this. Yeah, Shao, do you want to stop here and continue async, or because it's like we are
I would definitely encourage having this conversation in the MR itself so that it can be used for future reference on the strategy that we use. But yeah, thanks a lot for all the valuable discussion that we had. As for the steps for before next meeting, so as we discussed regarding creating new widget for the epics, especially with the dates, I'll go ahead and link the spike with the MR that Kasha has already created, and we'll have the conversation there. So yeah. So yep. Thanks a lot, everyone. And
sorry,
sorry.
Kushal, just before we finish, just based on what Felipe has shown, is the only blocker to us not starting the work to sync data is the only blocker that we don't have the start and due date widget, or are there other things missing as well?
I don't think this is really a blocker. I think we could start syncing simple attributes as name and descriptions already. Yeah, I think so. I think this is not blocked.
So I think what might be blocking here is perhaps the epics which have their dates inheriting from its child issues, right? Like currently in the API layer we have a flag called start date fixed or due date fixed, and that Boolean value represents where the date is actually coming from. But yeah, if we are plainly copying the columns, then I think we can still move ahead on this one. So
okay, thanks. It's actually data import, I think, that's blocked, right? Sorry, Jan, I talked over the top of you.
There is a discussion about this on the top level epic for this epic migration, and my understanding is that we agreed that we would not wait for finishing any widgets. We would start with synchronizing only the bare minimum for the item, which is name and description, and then iteratively adding more and more widgets when they are ready. And for the wall time, the mirrored work item would be hidden from end users behind the feature flag. And once we have prepared mirroring of all the components of the epic, we will just enable this after running some backfilling of existing epics.
Great, thanks. Yeah, that's ideal. Because it means that, like, if we start with title and description, we should get an idea of how costly syncing everything is with a smaller surface area than all widgets at once.
Yeah, so I think we can end the conversation here, and we have the action items for before next meeting to do. So, yep, thanks a lot, everyone, and have a good rest of the week.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.